good if you are awake, but it's not good if you are scared of me. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. My name is Leslie Hawthorne. I'm with Elasticsearch, and I'm here today to talk to you about Community 2.0 beyond simply using software Livre. So, a little bit about me and my background. I have been working in the software Livre world now for almost a decade. I got my start managing the Google Summer of Code program. I don't know if folks in the audience might be familiar with that. Okay, I see a couple of hands going up. That's great. For those who do not know about the Summer of Code program, it's a program by which Google pays students to work on software Livre projects. And it's held in the summer, which is actually winter in the southern hemisphere. So I actually got to know and love Fisl from all of the students in the Summer of Code program who would gently email me and tell me how hard they were working on their projects during their school term. So this is my third time at Fisl and my fourth time here in Brazil. And when I am not working as a community manager for Elasticsearch, helping to educate folks about the open source projects that we produce, I help folks to learn how to contribute to software Livre projects and volunteer with a couple of different organizations, including the Open Source Initiative, the Privly Foundation, and other folks who ask for my time and my help. So today I would like to talk to you folks about different ways that you can help software Livre projects improve and how you can help to gain new skills as part of that process. So, why are we here today? We're here today to talk about contributing to software Livre. And it may seem at first that this is not something that we really need to do. And if you take a look at this wonderful slide and this wonderful quote by a gentleman by the name of Marc Andreessen, who's a famous venture capitalist, he observed around 3 years ago that software is eating the world, which sounds a little bit strange. But what Mr. Andreessen meant by this was that now all companies are effectively differentiated in their offerings because of the software that they create. If a delivery company does not have good logistics software, they will not be able to make their deliveries as fast as their competitors. If a grocery chain does not have effective software to manage their inventory, they will end up having products go bad and losing revenue. So it is no longer that we differentiate ourselves and our businesses by our offerings, but in fact how we are able to bring those offerings to the marketplace. So if now all companies and their works are the most important part of it is software, what is even more interesting is that 2 years later, the folks who conduct the annual open source survey, Black Duck Software, observed that if software is eating the world, then software Livre is eating the software world. There's almost 1 million unique software Livre projects out in the marketplace today. And does anybody spend time on GitHub? Of course. Absolutely. I mean, you go to GitHub now and you're looking for source code, and you can find source code to solve just about every problem you have. Publicly accessible, available on GitHub, hopefully under a Livre license so that you yourself can make use of it, do whatever you need to do with it, and that's great. And unsurprisingly to everyone in this room, it's actually Fisl that is leading the way in the entire world around the use of free software. I am a visitor here, and I don't want to tell anyone in the audience something that they already know, but in 2003, obviously, Fisl has enacted legislations in preference of software Livre. This is the first place where the very first software Livre ATM network was implemented. There is the public portal for the sharing of software between business and government that individuals can use themselves. And this, again, started more than a decade ago in this country. And Fisl has been a model for government agencies all over the world to adopt policies around software Livre. So, in fact, I want to say it was about 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, we were very excited in my home country, the United States, because the White House decided that they were going to create their website in Drupal. And it was a triumph for open source software. And open source software has won the war 2 years ago. For you, more than a decade ago. So obviously, Team Fisl in the lead. But what I find very curious is that almost no one knows about all of the activity that is going on in the Software Livre world here in Brazil. I go to many conferences to speak about contributing to Software Livre projects, and when people talk about the global community of Software Livre, of people who are users and developers, more often than not, they have this vision in their heads that this is work that is going on in the United States and in Europe. And I will frequently ask people in the audience, how many of you know about all of the Software Livre activity in Brazil? Not a single hand raises. I will go to the FOSDEM conference, which happens every year in Brussels, Belgium. And they get around 4,000 people. And I talk to folks and I say, I really am excited to be here again at FOSDEM. Has anyone been to Fisl? And no one has heard of Fisl. And no one knows that Fisl attracts 7,000, 8,000 people. I think the last year that I was here for Fisl 10, there were 10,000 people here to talk about Software Livre. But it's relatively unknown. And so why exactly is that happening? Because that, to me, is very puzzling. So I did a little bit of research, and there are, of course, the obvious reasons why people may not know as much about what's going on with Software Livre here in Brazil, right? The language barrier, obviously, the lingua franca of computer science and talking on the internet is in English. And if English is not your first language, it can be difficult to communicate with other people. I also noticed that every time I read a note to one of the project mailing lists that I'm on, when I get an email from a contributor who is in Brazil, it always starts off with, "I am very sorry that my English is so bad." And every time I read that, I think, well, don't feel bad. I know 3 whole words of Brazilian Portuguese, and one of them is caipirinha, which I'm pretty sure doesn't actually count. So, and I also heard from a friend that apparently people in Brazil feel very bad if their English is not perfect. So maybe that keeps people from wanting to talk. Not 100% sure. But I figured language barrier wasn't a good enough explanation for why folks did not know what was going on in the Software Livre world here in Brazil. So I did some more additional research, and I came across a study by 2 gentlemen who are researchers at Brazilian universities. They published it in 2007 regarding the use of Software Livre in developing countries. Specifically, they were looking at Brazil. And this was a really great study. It had almost 4,000 respondents, which is a huge sample size. A little more than half of the people responding to the survey called themselves developers. The other 1,300 folks said that they were users of Software Livre. And this study had some very interesting conclusions. One of them was only 30% of the people who responded to this survey, who identified themselves as software developers, made the source code that they created available in public repositories. The other 70% were not publishing any of the Software Livre that they had created. So obviously, if the code that's being created isn't being shared, then no one's going to know about it, right? So it's our responsibility, if we're enjoying the use of Software Livre, if we are making our livelihoods from Software Livre, then we need to, as a community, come together and make sure that Software Livre remains strong, that we continue to create Software Livre, that we continue to provide support to our communities who care about Software Livre, because if we keep drinking from the cup but we don't refill it, it will become empty, and our communities will be less rich and less vibrant without our efforts. So let's talk about why it's useful to contribute to Software Livre, beyond just it's important for the community and it helps you to feel good. So I want to talk about this in 2 different ways, because the benefits of contributing to Software Livre are very different if you are an organization or if you are an individual person. So for businesses, there are many reasons to contribute to Software Livre. First of all, if you have a particular methodology within your company that you think is important and will help others to be able to be effective, and you want to share that methodology, you can influence technical culture if you are open about your development process and if you are open with your source code. Obviously, there are other economic benefits as well to participating in the Livre software world. If you are a company and you publish your software as open source software or as free software, you have the opportunity for others to contribute bug fixes, patches, ideas for new features. And the great benefit here is this is kind of a crowdsourced research and development lab. No matter how big your company is, you cannot possibly hire all of the smart people in the world to help you create your products. So you may come up with great and brilliant ideas from folks who are not even within your organization if your software is open. So for individuals, again, there are benefits beyond those for organizations. So it's great that as individuals, if you're working at an organization that produces software Livre, you'll get the opportunity to meet more fun and more smart colleagues. But for the individual, the reasons to contribute to software Livre are because of the ability to gain new skills and interact with the community. We're all here today at Fisl. I don't have to explain to anyone the importance of coming together with like-minded people who are your friends, who care about the same things that you do, and sharing a fun talking about a talk after it is concluded, or having a caipirinha or a beer later tonight. We all understand how that can be joyous and beneficial to us. But participating in Livre software projects has benefits also that are for our intellect and for our ability to be employed. Working in a software Livre project can help you to gain new skills, be it learning a new programming language or working on a type of project that you've never worked on before, so good for your brain. And working on a software Livre project can also help you to find a job, right? People talk now about, at least in the US and Europe, how GitHub is the new resume. So people will not necessarily ask you for your curriculum vitae if they would like to hire you, but they will ask you for the URL to your GitHub repository to see what kind of source code you've published. So participating in a software Livre project makes your contributions visible to everyone, which has benefits for you. So, how can folks help contribute to software Livre? So this one, I think, is a bit obvious, but we'll talk about it anyway. Publish your software under Livre licenses. So we talked just a couple slides back about how only 30% of the developers in Brazil are releasing their software publicly in publicly available repositories. That's not very much. So if you're using software Livre to build your products, take the resulting work, make it available to other folks. It'll help you to, again, find people who have different ideas or more ideas than you do, and you get to share that knowledge with the wider world, which is quite good. Same thing for individuals, right? If you're creating software Livre, if you have used software Livre to make something else, take the time to actually publish your source code. It is very easy. There are many tools now for sharing code. We don't have to use CVS anymore. So actually publish your software under a Livre license. So how many folks in the audience think that they would very much love to contribute to a software Livre project, but they can't because they're not a programmer? Okay, let's see a couple of hands in the audience. So, very fair. After all, these are software projects. So if you don't write software, you may feel like there's no opportunity for you to contribute. And I am here to be living proof for you that that is not true. I do not write software. I have written about 800 lines of Python in my career. I learned how to calculate my waitress's tip. It was not very interesting. I have a tip calculator on my phone that can do that for me. But I have contributed to several software Livre projects, either by doing advocacy work, marketing, helping to do writing, and community management activities. There are all kinds of different ways that you can contribute to the growth and health of software Livre whether or not you're a programmer and whether or not you have code to publish under a Livre license. So the first and easiest step, because we've already talked about Community 2.0 beyond using Software Livre. If you're already using Software Livre, the easiest way that you can contribute back to the community is by encouraging others to use Software Livre. Be a proud user of Software Livre and tell other people to use Software Livre and tell them why it is important that they do so. And it could be because you use the software yourself and you're very passionate about it because it has helped you to solve a problem that you've had. It could be simply that you are excited about the principles of Software Livre and the concepts of freedom that underlie the creation of this source code, and that is why you think it is important to share and that it's valuable. But passionate users who talk about why it's important to use a particular piece of software or why Software Livre is important and who inspire other people to become users, that work is invaluable. And it can be done by anyone who is a user of Software Livre, no matter what they do for their day job, programmer or not. Another thing that each of us can do, if we are users of Software Livre, is to teach other people to use Software Livre. Beyond just letting people know that Software Livre is available for them to use and encouraging them to use it, we can take the next step and do some hard work and actually show people how to use Software Livre. For all of us in the audience, we're probably immersed in technology 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Technology is a part of all of our interactions, and for us, using Software Livre is easy. But not everyone is as involved in technology as we are, and some people are very intimidated by learning new things. And actually taking the time to sit down with someone and explain to them how to, for example, install Firefox and import their bookmarks, or sitting down and explaining to somebody that they may wish to use, I don't know, a different media server that's actually free software, right? And why this is important to them. And, Freebox, for example, for, a Linux-based content system for your home files and music and stuff, right? If you talk to people and teach them how to use this, instead of saying, here's this thing, it can be good for you. Walking them through the process so that they feel comfortable and so they continue to use Software Livre is valuable and it's important. There are also, you can either do this one-on-one with your friends. I like to do things one friend at a time. I have gotten all my gal pals to start using Firefox, so I'm very proud of myself. But there's also, you can do it on a much larger scale if one-on-one is not going to be effective for you. So I was talking to some of my friends a couple days ago, and it sounds like install fests in Brazil are kind of nowadays. Used to be much more popular. That's certainly true in the United States as well. But there is no reason why we can't go back to having more install fests where we all get together, hang out for a couple of hours, eat some barbecue, help each other install Linux, other free software on our computers, and again, help other people to use it. And you can also do this on a regular basis, and it doesn't have to be a big party, although any excuse for a party is good. You can just get together and have study groups or user group meetings. And this is a place where people who have knowledge to share can come and share their knowledge. You can enjoy each other's company. And for people who are new to Software Livre, this is a good place for them to come and learn more about how to interact with the community and what this whole Software Livre thing is in a welcoming environment, which means that they will have a very positive experience and they will be excited to continue using Software Livre. So one of the most obvious ways that folks in Brazil are already contributing to Software Livre is in the area of translation and localization. But more help never hurts. I was doing some research through the Mozilla Developer Network, since I know that they have a prolific worldwide community, and looking at the volunteer translation team and the volunteer localization team. And I noted with shock that it looks like there are 14 people in Brazil volunteering for the Mozilla Developer Network translations team to make sure that all of Mozilla's developer documentation and user documentation is translated. into Brazilian Portuguese. And Brazil has about 200 million people. There are 15 people in China contributing to that effort for Mandarin. So China, 1.4 billion people, they have one more person volunteering. So Brazil is leading the charge there. That's fantastic. But if you know Portuguese and you know English, and you want to take the time to help other people learn more about Software Livre and help them get past that language barrier, translation, localization, these are great tasks that you can take on and help more people be able to come into the Software Livre world. Obviously, we've talked about helping others to get started with Software Livre and sharing of knowledge, and I can't stress this enough. It is really great to translate documentation. It's awesome. It's even cooler if you write some documentation. And I see a couple of eyes rolling in the audience. No one wants to write documentation. Totally get it. So if you're one of the odd souls in the world who likes to write documentation, I like to write documentation, I'm strange. Go ahead and write up some documentation on whatever you would like in Portuguese. Maybe it's a how-to document on how to install Fedora. Maybe it is how to set up your WordPress blog. Maybe it's a how-to tutorial from start to finish on setting up your favorite software project. Whatever you would like. And then publish that so that other people can make use of it. And then also take the time, if you interact with a local user group, or there is a local user group near you that cares about Software Livre and the topics that you've written about, let them know the blog post exists. Share it with them so that they can share it with other people. It's great that we have these very powerful internet search engines now, but we still can never beat the power of telling other folks what we're doing instead of waiting for them to find it on their own. Because if they don't know that it's there, they won't necessarily look for it. So if you are, like I said, one of those people who likes to write documentation, there's a wonderful project where you can get started called Write the Docs. It's at writethedocs.org. And this is an entire set of individuals and a community who's really excited about creating documentation for Software Livre projects. By the way, as we go through these examples, I'm going to talk about several different ways that you can contribute and projects that you can work with. You don't need to write it down or worry that you didn't hear me completely. There's a whole list of the resources at the end of this presentation, and I'll put it online as well. So if you're interested in joining any of these groups or learning more about them, there'll be more material in the slide deck later, and you can always download it and look them up later. So we talked about ways you can contribute if you weren't a programmer. And obviously my first thought here, write test suites. You need to be a programmer to obviously write software tests. Got it. And if you are a programmer and you are practicing test-driven development, you are in a good and happy place. And I bet your entire team loves you and does not read your code and wonder what you were thinking and swearing at you quietly while you were on vacation. So, again, writing tests, super important, but you need to be a programmer. But nobody needs to be a programmer to do QA testing, right? For most software packages, they're user-facing. You know, go ahead, take a look at it, start doing some testing, right? Just bang on it. Or every time you find a problem, file a bug report. That's testing. That is valuable. Taking the time to let a project know where something is broken and where it could be improved is actually a huge contribution. So I realize that for most people in this room, they're already very familiar with this process, but I promised that for folks who weren't programmers, we would talk more about contributing to Software Livre. So I want to take just a couple minutes to detour and talk about how to write a good bug report and the power of a good bug report. So a bug report is basically saying the software did not work the way I expected it to. So basically, a good bug report contains a description of the problem. Mozilla crashes upon startup. Steps to reproduce. Be running Linux Mint version 14, Firefox version such and such. Any additional details that you can provide about your system configuration are valuable. And then steps to reproduce. Start Firefox. What was the expected behavior? My browser would load, I could type something into the URL bar, and go off and surf the web. Great. Actual behavior. I start up Firefox, and each time I start it up, it crashes before the start page even renders. And bonus points, if when you're filing a bug report, if you can get any crash metrics or crash reporting statistics that the application might provide you. And again, ultra bonus points if you discover a problem and you can actually write software to fix it. I'm talking right now about ways non-programmers can contribute, but if you're a programmer, you know that nothing makes you happier than going into your issue queue and finding a bug report with a patch already attached to solve the problem. Another area in which folks can contribute to Software Livre that is incredibly important and I think very much neglected is in the area of usability and accessibility. I think that Software Livre is built by programmers who want the software to work for them, and that is wonderful. But we want more and more people using Software Livre, not just folks who are wizards or programmers. And one of the ways that we can help ensure that that happens is by making sure that the software is usable by more people who don't necessarily think like us. And just one second here. You can imagine you don't want to listen to me drinking water. It's probably scary. So performing usability testing is actually a fairly simple process, even if you don't have any training as a user experience designer. Performing a usability test is as simple as sitting with a user, walking them through a set of steps that you would like them to take with the software, and observing what worked well for them, what did not work well for them, asking them to talk out loud about their experience, what's confusing for them. There are really inexpensive and also Software Livre packages for doing eye tracking, seeing where a user is looking on the screen, and creating heat maps. So even if you are not experienced in doing usability testing, you can walk people through a checklist of exercise and record the screen capture of the heat map of where their eyes are on the screen. I think the most powerful example I have ever heard of going through this process was, I think it was like 6 years ago. I'm getting old. My memory is fading these days. I was at the one of the Drupal conventions in the US, and they were talking about the importance of usability testing. And they had a group of students who had all gotten together and had gone through some basic usability checklists, again with eye tracking software and creating heat maps. And they were talking about one of the most fundamental activities when using Drupal. I think it was like creating a new web page. I mean, it was that basic for a web content management system, creating a new page. And every user in the study failed. They could not do it. And everyone was absolutely horrified to hear this. I mean, it's terrible. And after they went through the process and looked at, the different heat maps and the eye tracking captures and everything, they realized that the reason this had never been caught before was all of the developers just bypassed this step because they know how to do everything either from the command line or otherwise, and they never went through the UI the way that a user would go through the UI. And so they never would have captured this because they just go in directly, bypassing this entirely. So again, even if you are not a wizard, you can sit with somebody, walk them through the software, give this report back to the community, and let them know this is a way we can improve. This is the way that we can help more people to use our software, and it will very much be appreciated. And if you have training as a user experience designer, Software Livre needs you very much. It is very important that we have as many people as possible using Software Livre, and they won't be able to do so if it's hard for them, or if it's frustrating for them, or if the experience makes them sad. Anybody in the room an artist in their spare time? I draw really bad stick figures, but I'm not an artist. So it's often surprises folks who are in the creative professions, like who are artists, that Software Livre needs them too. If you are a fan of Mozilla, you've probably seen all the cool fan art that people have created. If you're a Drupal fan, you may have seen the Drupal socks. Those are pretty cool. Again, all created by fans who wanted to create a cool craft project to show off how much they cared about the Software Livre project. One of the other most common requests that I hear from developers of Software Livre projects is for artists or game developers. They're really good at putting together game mechanics, but they're much less good at making their game look very beautiful. And for that, they need the help of artists, people who understand how to create something that is dynamic, visually appealing, and will work in concert with the movements and motions of the game mechanics. And these folks are well nigh impossible to find in the Software Livre world, probably because most artists would never think that there was a place for them in a software project, even if they were civic-minded and really wanted to volunteer. So if you know of an artist or someone who is creative in this way who would love to help out, there is a Software Livre project. I have a list of them in the back of my head. I was going to say my back pocket, but really it's in my head, where these folks can help out. And my friend Kai will thank me if I ever find him an artist, so maybe you can help me with that part. Last but certainly not least, and again, what I do for my day job, marketing is important. I know a lot of folks who are technologists, they hear the word marketing and think that perhaps it is some sort of curse word, but it in fact is not a curse word. Marketing is really just helping people to know what is available to them and why they should use it. So Software Livre is as Eric Raymond would say, it's a bazaar, and it's a very busy bazaar. If there are over 1 million unique Software Livre projects, and you can find just about anything you need on GitHub, and there's still plenty of code still sitting there on SourceForge that people find every day. How do people know what to choose? How do they know what to look for? How do they know that what they find is actually good? How do they know if between these 2 or 3 different options, which one they should choose based on their use case? And that's where marketing comes in, right? Just helping people to understand what the features are, why you would use it, that it's even there, is an important part of the process for getting more folks using and contributing to Software Livre. So if you're a marketer, if you like writing blog posts or newsletters or taking pictures at events that you can share, that kind of thing helps a lot because you're simply helping to keep people informed, you're helping them to know what's available to them, and you're also helping to engender that feeling of community because you keep everybody informed and keep sharing the stories and sharing the knowledge. And so everybody, again, has a shared vocabulary, which helps that feeling of tribal spirit and that feeling of connectedness inside a project. So there are lots and lots and lots of resources for people who would like to be new contributors to Software Livre. And I list them, again, out all at the end of this presentation, but a couple just right off the top of my head. If you are not a programmer, or if you would like to become a programmer, the Open Hatch project is a great place to get started. These folks have created an entire community portal where any Software Livre project can put up a list of bite-sized bugs or very simple, small projects so that someone who's an absolute beginner can get started contributing to their project. And even if they don't have a specific list of needs at the very beginning, they can just put up a button that says, I want to help. And someone can come along and read the description of the project and go, that sounds really great. I think I'd like to spend my time with some of these folks. Click, I want to help. And that, in clicking that button, an email is sent to someone who has decided that they would like to mentor for this project. They get in touch with the person, they help them get started. Maybe it's creating artwork for a game. Maybe it's doing some grooming of the wiki. Maybe it's writing some test suites. Maybe it's coding up a whole new feature. It all depends on what your skill set is and what you want to actually accomplish. And there are folks here who will help you. All you have to do is say, okay, I want to help. So in conclusion, I just wanted to reiterate to everyone in the audience that no matter how you contribute to Software Livre, even if you are simply just a user who is passionate and tells other people about the importance of using Software Livre, if you release your work under a Livre license, if you host meetups and help people learn about Software Livre, it all matters. All of these things are a contribution. All of these things are very, very valuable. All of these help to strengthen our community. They help to strengthen the world of Software Livre, and they help to ensure that all of us can continue coming together with like-minded folks and enjoy each other's company, enjoy sharing knowledge, time together. Thank you. Any questions? You are probably all right now at the post-lunch food coma, where you are very tired. I understand. Lunch was very good. Questions going once? Twice? Obrigada. Thank you very much for coming.